Good evening, dear dreamer, and welcome to Whispers of the Night. Tonight, you don't need to do anything at all. You've already arrived exactly where you're meant to be. As you settle in, allow your shoulders to soften and your breath to slow. This is a place for rest, for gentle stories, and for quiet moments that help your mind unwind after a long day. If these calm nights bring you comfort, I invite you to quietly subscribe to Whispers of the Night and join us again whenever the world feels too loud. You may also leave a soft like or kind comment. It helps this peaceful space reach other dreamers in need of rest. Let the outside world fade just a little more and allow tonight's story, the Petal and Cog Symphony, to carry you gently into stillness. Before the story begins, take a slow, gentle breath in through your nose and let it fall out softly through your mouth again. Breathe in, calm and unhurried, and release. With each breath, imagine the weight of the day easing away. Your forehead smooths, your jaw loosens, your shoulders sink comfortably into rest. Picture yourself standing in a quiet valley at dusk. The air is cool but kind, wrapping around you like a familiar blanket. Above, flowering trees sway gently, releasing petals that drift slowly downward. Never rushing, never falling too fast. With every petal that touches the ground, your thoughts grow quieter. Nothing needs your attention right now. Nothing is expected of you. Somewhere beneath the earth, you sense a soft, steady rhythm, gears turning slowly, patiently, supporting the world without effort. You don't need to see them. You simply trust that they are there. Allow your breathing to match that rhythm. If your mind wanders, that's perfectly okay. Gently guide it back to the sound of your breath, to the feeling of being held by a calm, living world. You are safe, you are supported, and you are ready to listen. The Petal and Cog Symphony, where petals drift and gears breathe. Morning in Lunara Vale always arrived quietly, as if it did not wish to wake anyone too quickly. Light slipped gently between the hills, pale and warm, brushing over treetops and settling like a soft blanket across the valley floor. Flowering trees lined the winding paths, their branches heavy with blossoms in shades of cream, blush, and faint lavender. When the breeze moved through them, petals loosened and drifted downward, slow and patient, turning the air itself into something gentle and alive. Beneath the soil and inside the rounded hills, something else stirred. Old brass gears, smooth with age and care, turned in an unhurried rhythm. They did not clatter or grind. Instead, they breathed low and steady like the valley's hidden heartbeat. These gears powered simple wonders, water wheels that turned lazily in narrow streams, wind chimes that sang softly when the air passed through them, and lanterns that would later glow at dusk with a warm, honey-colored light. In Lunara Vale, nature and machine did not compete. They listened to one another, moving together as if they had always known how. The valley itself seemed aware of its own calm. Paths curved instead of cutting straight lines. Streams wandered instead of rushing. Even the clouds above drifted slowly, lingering as though there were nowhere else they needed to be. It was a place where time felt wide and open, where moments could stretch without breaking. At the edge of this valley stood a small wooden home, its walls silvered by years of sun and rain. Vines climbed along its sides, their leaves brushing softly against the windows when the wind passed by. Inside lived a boy named Elier and his grandfather, a quiet man known throughout the vale as the clock keeper. Elier had grown up with sound, not loud sound, never sharp or sudden, but the constant presence of gentle ticking and turning. Inside the house, clocks of many shapes and sizes rested on shelves and hung from beams. Some were tall and narrow, others round and wide, their faces painted with careful hands long ago. Their ticking blended together into a soft pattern, like rain falling far away. Elier was small for his age, with dark hair that never quite lay flat and eyes that seemed always to be watching, even when he was still. He moved slowly, not out of tiredness, but out of attention. When he walked, he noticed the way the floor creaked beneath certain steps. When he sat by the window, he watched petals float past and wondered where they would land. His grandfather rarely spoke. His voice, when used, was low and warm, but words were precious to him, saved for moments that truly needed them. Most days, he worked at a long wooden table, repairing clocks with steady hands. He cleaned their gears, adjusted their springs, and listened closely, as though each clock had something important to say. Elier often sat nearby, watching. He loved the way the gears caught the light, how brass gleamed softly without shining too brightly. Sometimes his grandfather would place a clock in Elier's hands, guiding his fingers gently, teaching him how to feel when something was balanced just right. Those lessons were quiet, filled more with presence than instruction. Yet even surrounded by such calm, Elier felt something else. A sense, faint but steady, like a thread tugging gently at his thoughts. It was not a sound he could hear with his ears, nor a sight he could see clearly. It was more like a feeling that the valley itself was humming a song just beyond his reach. As the day drifted toward evening, the light grew softer, shadows lengthened, and the air cooled in a comforting way. Petals fell more thickly now, swirling in slow patterns, as if guided by unseen hands. Elier stood at the window, watching them gather along the path. When he noticed something subtle, the ticking inside the house had shifted, not louder, not faster, just different. The clocks still moved as they always had, but their rhythm felt slightly changed, as though a new note had been added to their familiar pattern. Elier held his breath and listened more closely. Then he heard it, a sound woven delicately through everything else, soft and melodic, warm as lamplight. It rose and fell gently, neither calling nor demanding, simply existing. It seemed to blend the whisper of leaves with the slow turning of gears, as if nature and machine were speaking the same language at once. Elier's heart felt suddenly light, like something inside him had recognized the sound before his mind could understand it. He glanced toward his grandfather, who paused in his work. The old man's hands rested still on the table, his eyes closed for a brief moment, as though he, too, was listening. When he opened them, he met Elier's gaze and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. That was all the permission Elier needed. He slipped on his coat and stepped outside. The evening had settled fully now, and lanterns along the paths began to glow one by one. Their light did not flicker harshly. It breathed steady and reassuring, casting soft circles onto the ground. Petals caught in the lantern glow looked like drifting sparks, slow and peaceful. The sound was clearer here, though still gentle. It seemed to move with him, never ahead, never behind, just slightly to the side, encouraging without pushing. Elier followed the path as it curved deeper into Lunara Vale, his footsteps quiet against the earth as he walked. The valley seemed to lean closer, attentive. Wind chimes turned lazily, adding their voices to the melody. Water wheels creaked softly, their movements perfectly timed. Even the trees seemed to sway in rhythm, petals falling in graceful arcs. Elior did not feel afraid. Instead, a calm curiosity filled him, warm and steady. Whatever this sound was, it felt like it belonged, not just to the valley, but to him as well. He walked on beneath the glowing lanterns, petals drifting around him like a gentle snowfall. As the quiet music led him deeper into the heart of Lunara Vale, toward something waiting just beyond the bend in the path. The boy who listened closely. The path through Lunara Vale curved gently beneath Elier's feet, as if guiding him without ever needing to hurry him along. Lantern light followed him in soft pools, glowing amber against the deepening blue of evening. Petals continued to drift from the flowering trees above, some brushing his sleeves, others settling briefly in his hair before floating away again. The air was cool but kind, carrying the faint scent of blossoms and old brass warmed by the day. Elier walked slowly, not because he was tired, but because walking slowly felt right here. Each step seemed to match the quiet pulse beneath the ground. He could feel it through the soles of his shoes, a gentle turning that never stopped, never rushed. The valley moved, the way a deep breath moves steady, patient, alive. As he passed a small pond beside the path, he paused. The water lay perfectly still, reflecting lantern light and the dark shapes of trees. Petals rested on the surface without sinking, pale and weightless, drifting apart when the faintest ripple passed beneath them. Elier crouched near the edge and watched as a gear, half hidden beneath clear glass panels set into the stone, turned slowly below the waterline. Each rotation sent a whisper through the pond, a sound so soft it felt more like a memory than a noise. He listened carefully, not just with his ears, but with his shoulders relaxed, his breath steady, his attention open. The sound he had noticed earlier was still there, threading itself through everything else. It was clearer now, but still gentle, layered, and warm. Wind moved through leaves. Petals brushed against metal. Gears resonated softly, like bells heard from far away. Together, they formed something whole. Elier stood and continued along the path, feeling as though the valley itself was walking beside him. The hills rose and fell like resting animals, their mossy sides glowing faintly where lanterns had been placed. Glass panels appeared now and then along the ground, revealing the slow dance of gears beneath. Some were small and precise, others wide and heavy, all moving in calm agreement. Ahead, a shape shifted between the trees. Elier slowed, his curiosity gentle and unafraid. A mechanical deer stepped into view, its body crafted from smooth wood and pale brass. Leaf-shaped etchings traced along its sides, and tiny flowers had taken root in the seams where metal met wood. Its eyes glowed softly, not bright, just enough to reflect the lantern light. Each step placed carefully on the path. When it stopped, it tilted its head slightly, as though listening right back. Elier felt a small smile form, warm and natural. "Hello," he whispered, though he wasn't sure why. The deer did not answer, but it seemed to understand. It lowered its head, then stepped aside, allowing Elier to pass. As he walked on, he heard the faint ticking of its inner gears fade gently behind him. Further along, a bird fluttered down from a branch above. Its wings were thin sheets of metal, etched with delicate veins, like real leaves. When it settled near Elier, its wings folded with a soft chime. It hopped once, then again, pecking lightly at the ground, as though searching for something only it could see. Elior stopped to watch. The bird's chest rose and fell, not with breath, but with the turning of a tiny mechanism inside. Its ticking blended seamlessly with the music in the air. When it looked up at him, its small glass eyes reflected the lantern glow, calm and knowing. "I hear it too," Elier murmured, though again, the words felt less important than the feeling behind them. The bird lifted its wings and drifted upward, disappearing into the branches. Elier continued on, his heart light, his steps easy. He passed softly, ticking insects nestled among flowers, their bodies no larger than pebbles, each contributing its own quiet note to the harmony. Memories surfaced gently, like petals rising from still water. His grandfather's voice, low and calm, telling stories late in the evening. Stories about a time when the valley had learned to listen to itself. About a balance called the Petal and Cog Symphony, where nature and machine found harmony not by control, but by care. The stories had never been finished. They always ended softly, with his grandfather resting a hand on Elier's shoulder and letting the ticking of clocks fill the silence. Elier had never minded. Even then, he had felt that some things were meant to be felt more than explained. Now, as the music around him grew clearer, he wondered if this was what the stories had been pointing toward. Not an event or a place, but a way of listening, a remembering. The path opened into a wider space, and Elier slowed even more. Lanterns here were placed farther apart, their light stretching gently across a clearing filled with flowers. In the center rose a tall structure, its shape both natural and crafted. Stone and wood formed its base, while brass frameworks curved upward, wrapped in flowering vines. Petals gathered along its edges, caught in small currents of air that seemed to flow constantly around it. Gears were visible here, larger and more numerous, meeting at careful angles beneath open arches. As they turned, they did not dominate the space. Instead, They seemed to wait, to listen, adjusting their pace as petals brushed against them and wind passed through their spokes. Elier stepped into the clearing, and the music softened, not fading away, but settling, as though holding its breath. He felt no pressure to move closer, no urgency, just a quiet invitation. He stood there for a long moment, listening with his whole body. The ground beneath him was warm. The air rested gently against his skin. The valley seemed to lean in, attentive and patient, waiting to see what he would notice next. Elior took one slow step forward, then another, drawn not by sound alone, but by a feeling of belonging. The listening tower stood calm and steady before him, petals drifting lazily around its base, gears turning in quiet harmony, and as the music rested, waiting with him, Elier sensed that this was only the beginning, that the valley had more to share, and that by listening closely, he was about to learn how to hear it. The silent orchestra beneath the veil. The listening tower welcomed Elier without a sound. Its wide entrance curved inward like a resting breath, and as he stepped across the threshold, the air changed almost immediately. It grew warmer, softer, carrying the faint glow of lantern light, mixed with something gentler still, an inner radiance that seemed to rise from the walls themselves. The outside world did not vanish behind him, but it quieted, as though it had settled into a comfortable distance. The floor beneath his feet was smooth stone, warmed as if it had been holding sunlight all day. Petals lay scattered here, gathered by unseen currents, their colors deepened by the golden light. Ahead, a spiral path descended slowly, wide enough that Elier never felt closed in. He placed one hand lightly against the wall as he walked, feeling a steady hum pass through the stone, calm and reassuring with each step downward. The music he had been following changed slightly. It grew fuller, not louder, as though layers were being gently uncovered. Elier's breathing slowed to match it, and he felt his shoulders relax, his thoughts becoming lighter, drifting like petals on still water. The spiral path opened into a vast chamber beneath the veil. Elier paused at the edge, taking it in slowly, letting his eyes adjust. The space stretched wide and high, its ceiling lost in a soft glow that shifted like dawn light through mist. Great gears turned here, some as tall as trees, others small and precise, all moving at a pace that felt carefully chosen. Their surfaces were smooth and worn, polished not by haste, but by time. Between the gears hung delicate conduits woven from petal stems and fine threads of light. Petals drifted through them in gentle streams, brushing softly against the glowing strands. Each touch produced a faint tone, no sharper than a sigh, joining the larger harmony that filled the chamber. Long strings, made entirely of light, stretched from wall to wall, vibrating slowly, their movement so subtle it could be missed if one did not watch closely. Elier stepped fully into the chamber, his footsteps barely making a sound. He felt very small here, but not in a lonely way, more like standing beneath a wide sky, where being small felt peaceful and right. As he passed, The music responded, not changing abruptly, but acknowledging him like a calm presence. Noticing a new detail, Eliar's heart warmed at the feeling. He stopped near a cluster of gears, turning together in careful sequence. One of them lagged just slightly behind the others, its rhythm still gentle, but not quite aligned. The sound it made was not unpleasant, just faintly out of place. Like a footstep landing half a beat late, Eliar did not reach for it right away. He remembered his grandfather's quiet lessons, how nothing liked to be rushed, how listening came before touching. He stood still, hands at his sides, and listened with his whole body. The hum beneath his feet, the light in the air, the slow breathing of the chamber itself. Nearby, a stream of petals drifted downward too quickly, slipping past a conduit instead of gliding through it. They gathered briefly on the floor before dissolving into light. The music here wavered just a little, like a ripple across a calm pond. Elior stepped closer. He knelt beside the uneven gear, not touching it yet, simply placing his hand near its edge. He felt warmth radiating from it, and beneath that, a quiet tiredness, as though it had been turning for a long time without being noticed. "It's all right," he whispered, his voice barely more than breath. He did not know why he said it, only that it felt true. Slowly, carefully, he rested his fingertips against the side of the gear. He did not push, he did not pull, he simply let his hand be there, steady and calm. The gear responded almost immediately, its movement easing, aligning more closely with the others. The sound it made softened, slipping back into the harmony like a note finding its place. Eliar smiled, a small, quiet smile. He moved on, guided not by sight alone, but by feeling. Where the music felt smooth, he passed by without stopping. Where it wavered, he paused. Sometimes, all it took was lifting a single petal and setting it gently into a nearby current, allowing it to drift where it belonged. Other times, he would stand near a string of light, humming softly, not a tune, just a steady tone, and the string would vibrate in response. Settling into balance, the chamber seemed to breathe with him. Light warmed and cooled in slow cycles. Gears adjusted their pace, not all at once, but gradually, as if learning again how to move together. Eliar felt no rush, no sense that he had to finish anything. There was only the present moment, wide and kind, as the harmony steadied. A deeper warmth spread through the chamber. The glow grew richer, more golden, reflecting off brass and stone, petals and light strings alike. Eliar felt it in his chest, a gentle fullness, like a quiet understanding settling into place. He realized then that this place had never needed someone to command it. It had only ever needed someone to notice, to listen closely enough to respond with care instead of control. Eliar stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by the silent orchestra beneath the veil. The music flowed around him, through him, steady and whole. For a moment, it felt as though the chamber itself was listening back, aware of him in a way that was calm and welcoming. A soft vibration passed through the stone beneath his feet, not startling, but warm, like a gentle greeting. Eliar closed his eyes and breathed, feeling the harmony settle not just around him, but within him as well. When he opened his eyes, the chamber seemed brighter, clearer, as though something had been quietly agreed upon. The music did not fade. It continued, endless and patient, now carrying a subtle sense of invitation. Eliar sensed that this balance, this listening was only one part of a larger journey. The harmony had noticed him. Yes, but more than that, it had opened a path forward, deeper into understanding, deeper into the quiet song that connected everything. And with that gentle awareness, Elier took a slow breath and stepped onward, ready to listen to whatever the valley would share with him next. When the valley remembers, light greeted Elier as he rose from the depths of the listening tower, not suddenly, but in a slow and patient way. The glow beneath the veil softened behind him as the spiral path carried him upward, each step easing him closer to the surface. The warmth stayed with him, though like a quiet ember resting in his chest. The music, too, did not fade. It simply became lighter, thinner, as though it had learned how to travel with him when he stepped back into the open air. Dawn was just beginning to stretch across Lunara Vale. The sky held a pale wash of color-soft blues and gentle pinks blending together without edges. The lanterns along the paths still glowed, but their light had changed. It felt warmer now, calmer, as if each lantern remembered why it was lit in the first place. Petals drifted from the trees in a steady, even fall. Not too many, not too few. They moved with the breeze, as though guided by a shared understanding, settling where they were meant to rest. Elier paused at the tower's entrance and watched them for a while, noticing how they no longer clumped together or scattered too quickly. Everything felt balanced, as if the valley had exhaled after holding its breath for a very long time. He began walking home, his steps unhurried. The paths felt familiar beneath his feet, yet also gently renewed. The ground seemed to support him with quiet confidence, and the air felt lighter against his skin. Somewhere nearby, a water wheel turned, its slow creak blending perfectly with the whisper of the stream beside it. As Elier walked, he listened, not straining, just open. The valley spoke in small ways, in the way a breeze moved through grass, in the soft clink of petals brushing against metal, in the low, steady hum beneath everything. A rhythm he now recognized not as a mystery, but as a presence. A mechanical bird fluttered down from a branch ahead of him, its left wings folding neatly at its sides. Its movements were smoother than before, more fluid, as though it had remembered something important about how to fly. It tilted its head at Elier, ticking softly, then lifted back into the air, joining the real birds weaving gentle patterns in the morning sky further along. A mechanical deer stood near the edge of a clearing, its brass sides catching the early light. Flowers bloomed along its joints, their petals opening slowly. The deer lowered its head to drink from a stream, its reflection steady and calm in the water. When it looked up, its glowing eyes met Elier's for a moment, filled with a quiet recognition. Then it stepped back into the trees, its movements blending seamlessly with the living forest around it. Elier felt a warmth spread through him at the sight. Not pride, not responsibility, just reassurance. The valley was not changed by him. It had simply remembered itself, and in doing so, it had invited him to remember too. As the sun climbed higher, Elier's thoughts turned to to his grandfather. He pictured the old man at the wooden table, hands steady, listening more than speaking. The unfinished stories came back to him now with new clarity. They had never needed endings because they were not meant to be told all at once. They were meant to unfold slowly, like petals falling, like gears turning, like a rhythm carried quietly through days and years. His grandfather had known this. Elior understood that now. Words could point the way, but they could not hold the whole of it. The Petal and Cog Symphony was something you lived beside, something you felt grow within you over time. It was patience. It was attention. It was listening when nothing seemed to be asking. By the time Elior reached the edge of the valley, the sky was fully awake. Morning light touched the wooden walls of his home, warming them to a gentle gold. Smoke rose lazily from the chimney, carrying the familiar scent of herbs and old wood. Inside, clocks ticked in calm agreement, their sounds blending into a single, soothing presence. Elior stepped inside quietly. His grandfather stood at the table, adjusting a small clock with careful fingers. He looked up as Elior entered, his eyes kind and steady. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. No words passed between them, but something did not need to be said. Elior felt the rhythm within him, steady and comforting. He knew now that it would stay, not as a sound he had to chase, but as a quiet guide he could return to whenever he listened closely enough. The day passed gently. Elior helped with small tasks, winding clocks, polishing brass, opening windows to let the breeze carry petals through the house. Each movement felt connected, purposeful, without being urgent. The valley outside hummed softly, its memory alive in every detail. As evening returned once more, the light shifted again. Lanterns glowed, warm and welcoming. The air cooled just enough to invite rest. Elior stepped outside and wandered to his favorite place beneath a flowering tree near the path. He sat down, leaning against its trunk, feeling the rough bark steady against his back. Petals drifted down around him, settling on his shoulders, his knees, the ground at his feet. They gathered like a blanket, light and comforting. Above him, branches swayed gently, and the sky deepened into shades of violet and soft blue. The music rose again, familiar and full, softer than before, yet richer, as though it had learned how to hold its own quiet joy. Elior closed his eyes and listened. He did not try to understand it. He did not need to. The rhythm was already part of him, moving with his breath, resting with his thoughts. The valley hummed in contentment, every gear and petal and living thing moving together in calm agreement. And as Elior sat there beneath the tree, wrapped in sound and silence alike, he sensed that this gentle harmony would continue through nights and mornings yet to come, guiding him softly toward whatever waited next. The night the music rested, night arrived in Lunara Vale, the way a soft blanket settles over a resting body, slowly, patiently, without edges. The last lanterns along the paths dimmed to their lowest glow, not going dark, just breathing more quietly. The sky deepened into a wide field of indigo, scattered with stars that did not sparkle sharply but rested in place. Calm and watchful, Eliar lay in his bed beneath the slanted roof of the wooden house. The window beside him left slightly open. Cool night air slipped in, carrying the faint scent of blossoms and old brass. Somewhere beyond the hills, an owl called once, then fell silent again, as though satisfied with the sound it had placed into the world. The clocks inside the house still ticked, but even they seemed gentler now. Their rhythm had softened, spreading out like long, slow footsteps instead of steady marching. Eliar listened without trying to count the beats. He did not need to follow them. He simply let them be there, outside. Petals brushed against the window pane now and then, a sound so light it barely reached his ears. When it did, it felt like a reminder rather than an interruption. The valley was still awake, but only just. Its great symphony, once so rich and layered, had lowered itself into something almost invisible, almost silence. Eliar rested on his side, his blanket pulled up to his chest. Moonlight slipped through the window and laid a pale shape across the floor, touching the edges of his bed. It moved slowly, inch by inch, as the moon climbed higher, never rushing, never stopping. Deep beneath the valley, the gears still turned. Eliar could feel them more than hear them now. A faint vibration traveled through the ground, through the house, through his bones, steady and reassuring. It was not asking for attention. It was simply there, doing what it had always done. As he lay listening, a gentle understanding settled over him. The symphony did not need to play loudly all the time. Just as the valley had its mornings and evenings, it also needed its nights. Silence was not an absence. It was a resting place. This thought brought him comfort. The curiosity that had followed him through the days eased into something warmer and calmer. He did not need to listen closely tonight. He did not need to notice every detail. The valley was holding itself, just as it was holding him. His grandfather's presence drifted into his thoughts, not as an image, but as a feeling. The way the old man's hands had moved carefully over clock faces, the way he had paused before speaking, letting silence do some of the work. Eliar understood now that those pauses had always been part of the lesson even stories needed. Spaces between their words, Eliar's breathing slowed, matching the quiet rhythm beneath the ground. Inhale, exhale. The valley seemed to breathe with him, hills rising and falling, almost imperceptibly. The night air pressed gently against the house, steady and protective, as sleep began to approach. His thoughts loosened their shape. Images drifted through his mind without weight or urgency. He saw petals turning slowly in midair, each one glowing faintly as it passed a hidden light. He saw cogs moving beneath clear glass, their edges warm and smooth, their turning unhurried in one drifting dream. He walked beside his grandfather through Lunara Vale, neither of them speaking. Their footsteps matched the valley's rhythm perfectly. In another, he stood beneath the listening tower, not inside it this time, but resting against its outer wall, feeling its steady warmth through the stone. These dreams did not demand meaning. They passed through him like soft music heard from another room. Outside, the valley settled deeper into rest. Streams slowed their chatter. Wind paused among the trees. Mechanical creatures found quiet places to stand or rest, their ticking barely audible. blending into the night. Even the lanterns dimmed further, as though lowering their voices. Elior shifted slightly beneath his blanket, finding a more comfortable place, and the movement felt natural, unremarkable. The world adjusted around him without comment. The moon climbed higher, then began its slow descent. Shadows shifted across the room, smooth and unbroken. Petals continued to drift, some landing on the windowsill. Others carried farther along paths that curved gently out of sight. The symphony beneath the veil played on, but now it was no longer something to listen to. It had become a foundation, a steady hum beneath sleep itself, a lullaby so soft it no longer needed sound. Elior's thoughts grew fewer, lighter, until they dissolved entirely. His breathing remained slow and even. The warmth in his chest stayed quiet and sure. The valley breathed, and in that shared stillness, everything rested exactly where it belonged, waiting patiently for the gentle music of morning to rise again. The symphony that continues morning returned to Lunara Vale without announcement, arriving the way it always had, softly, patiently, as if it had been waiting just beyond the hills for the right moment to step in. Pale light slipped across the valley floor, touching leaves, stone, and winding paths with a gentle hand. Dew rested on petals and grass, catching the light and holding it for a moment before letting it go. Elior woke slowly, not startled from sleep, but rising from it as one rises from warm water. His eyes opened to the familiar shape of the wooden ceiling above him, the quiet glow of early light filtering through the window. He lay still for a while, listening. The clocks were ticking again in their daytime rhythm, clear, steady, unhurried. Outside, a bird sang once, then paused, as though listening to its own echo. Beneath it all, deeper than sound, Elior felt the gentle pulse of the valley. It was there, just as it always had been, steady and calm. He sat up and stretched, the blanket sliding from his shoulders. He felt rested in a way that went beyond sleep, as though something inside him had settled into place. There was no urge to hurry, no pull toward the listening tower, no need to search. The music was not something he had to find anymore. It was simply with him. Elior, dressed and padded softly into the main room. Morning light filled the space, touching the clock faces and warming the wood. His grandfather stood by the window, adjusting a tall clock with careful fingers. His hair, silver and thin, caught the light like fine thread. He turned slightly as Elior entered, his eyes kind and steady. "Good morning," the old man said, his voice low and calm. "Good morning," Elior replied. That was all. It was enough. They worked together for a while in comfortable quiet. Elior handed his grandfather tools, wound smaller clocks, polished brass until it glowed softly. Each movement felt natural, guided by a rhythm that did not need thought. The clocks responded easily, their ticking blending into a single, soothing presence. When the work was done, Elior stepped outside. The valley greeted him with familiar warmth. Petals drifted from the trees, their fall even and unhurried. Paths curved gently through grass and flowers, leading nowhere urgent, everywhere welcoming. As he walked, he noticed the small details he had always loved, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, breaking into soft patterns on the ground, the faint hum beneath his feet, steady and reassuring, the quiet cooperation of wind and branch, petal and path. Mechanical creatures moved among the living ones, just as they always had. A bird with leaf-etched wings perched beside a real sparrow, both tilting their heads toward the breeze. A mechanical deer stepped carefully through tall grass, flowers blooming along its joints. Their ticking blended seamlessly with birdsong and rustling leaves, no longer standing apart. Elier did not stop to watch for long. He did not need to. He carried the understanding with him now, a quiet knowing that these things were exactly as they should be. He followed a familiar path that curved toward the heart of the valley. The listening tower rose in the distance, its shape calm and steady against the sky. Elier looked at it with gentle affection, but he did not feel drawn to enter. He understood that listening did not always require going inward. Sometimes it meant simply being present where you were. The day unfolded slowly. Elier wandered, helped where help was needed, rested when rest felt right. He listened when the world grew quiet and spoke when words felt natural. The valley responded in small ways, light shifting, air warming, sounds softening. As afternoon eased into evening, colors deepened. The sky warmed with gold and rose, then softened into lavender. Lanterns along the paths began to glow, their light steady and kind. Beneath the earth, gears turned, their rhythm unchanged, their harmony complete. Elier found his way to a gentle rise overlooking the valley. From there, he could see petals drifting along paths, lanterns glowing among trees, hills resting beneath the sky. He stood with his hands at his sides, breathing slowly, feeling the rhythm within him move in quiet agreement with the world around him. The music hummed gently, not demanding attention, not asking to be followed. It simply was. As the sun slipped lower, the glow beneath the valley grew warmer. The symphony continued, not as something new, not as something ending, but as something ongoing. Balance did not arrive and stay forever unchanged. It flowed, it rested, it returned. Elier understood this now in a way that felt deep and calm. Life would continue to move. There would be days of listening and days of rest, moments of sound and moments of silence. None of it needed to be held tightly. None of it needed to be fixed. The valley knew how to remember itself. Petals drifted around Elier's feet, settling gently on the ground. He watched them for a while, then lifted his gaze to the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. The air cooled, inviting stillness. The music softened, blending into the evening. Gears glowed faintly beneath the earth. Lanterns breathed their steady light. The world settled into its familiar rhythm. Elier stood there, calm and present, carrying the symphony within him without effort. And as the valley hummed on, endless and kind, the quiet invitation remained for anyone who listened closely enough to rest within it too. And so, the petals continue to fall, and the gears continue to turn, each in their own gentle time. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be held. Rest now. Dear dreamer, the symphony will carry you the rest of the way.